Hello, I hope you're doing all right. This is the Gadget Monkey. Now, I have been working diligently over the past few weeks to compile some videos based on some various items that I have been given to review or purchased recently. But all of that has been thrown to one side because I was given the opportunity to do something I've never done before. Review an item of hardware I have never gone near. I'm going to show you what it is. Based on the title of this video, you already know what it is. There goes the power cable. It's an M3 MacBook Air. This is the 2024 edition. I have a very spotty history with Apple products. I basically owned one iMac some years ago, and the iMac that I owned was faulty, and it had a dodgy graphics chip or some issue with the display. It was a long time ago now, so it's difficult to recall. So basically I opted not to carry on using Apple products. Which brings us to today. My wife has an iPhone, but I don't touch Apple normally. I'm a dyed-in-the-wool Linux user these days. So having the opportunity to try this out, initially I turned it down. I thought, well, actually, why not? Why not check this out and see what it's like to use an Apple laptop? It's been about 15 years since the last time I go. So keep watching and find out what I discovered about myself and the 2024 M3 MacBook Air.
All right, let's dive into the nitty gritty. After unboxing and that initial power up, the setup was, as expected, incredibly smooth. Apple's streamlined process makes it a breeze, even for those new to Mac OS. Now we're looking at the base model here. This is the 2024 MacBook Air with the M3 chip, the 8GB of unified memory, and the 256GB of SSD storage. The build quality is, of course, top-notch. The keyboard feels responsive, the trackpad is spacious and precise, and the overall design is sleek and portable. We've got two Thunderbolt USB 4 ports, a MagSafe charging port, and a headphone jack. Simple, but effective. Now, let's see how this M3 handles everyday tasks. I jumped into iMovie to do some basic video editing. As you can see, scrubbing through the timeline is smooth, and applying simple transitions and effects doesn't cause any noticeable lag. Exporting a short 1080p video was also relatively quick. For general productivity like typing documents, browsing the web with multiple tabs, and light multitasking, this MacBook Air breezes through everything. The M3 chip is incredibly efficient, and even with 8GB of RAM, things feel snappy. It's worth noting that 8GB is the base configuration, and if you plan on doing heavy video editing or running demanding applications, you might consider selecting the 16GB model, but for everyday use, it's more than capable. Now, if you're like me, of course, this is going to be a bone of contention. You buy a MacBook, you are happy with the configuration, and if you're not, then you sell it and you buy the next model up. You cannot open a MacBook and insert more RAM. That's not an option here. Something that I've been used to doing. Computers, even way back to my first computer, computers have been configurable to a certain extent, add bits to improve the overall specification. You can't do that with a MacBook Air. It's just not on the table. Now let's push this machine a little bit further. We're going to try out Old World, a strategy game that's available on Apple Silicon. I've set the graphics to medium settings to see how it performs, and as you can see, the game is playable and the frame rates are decent. It's not a gaming powerhouse, but the M3 handles this game surprisingly well for an integrated graphics solution. Of course, don't expect to run the latest AAA titles at maximum settings, but for casual gaming and games optimized for Silicon, it delivers a solid experience. During gameplay, the MacBook Air remained relatively cool, thanks to the M3's efficiency. There were no noticeable thermal throttling issues, which is impressive for a fanless design. In fact, overall, battery life has been exceptional with this computer. A mix of web browsing, video watching, and light productivity tasks. I easily got through a full workday on a single charge, and Apple's claims of extended battery life certainly seem to hold up in real-world use. Overall, the time I spent with the 2024 MacBook Air with its M3 chip, it seems to be a fantastic machine for everyday use. It's portable, powerful enough for most tasks, and offers incredible battery life. Yes, the 8GB of RAM might be a limitation for power users, but this is more than sufficient for the average user.
Now, by this point of the video, you found my results, you found out how much I liked this laptop, and I mean, I have been impressed with it, but what is perhaps the most astonishing thing about me and Apple is how I have somehow avoided using Apple products for decades. Now, friends of mine have used Apple, colleagues of mine have used Apple. My sister has an Apple laptop, a MacBook, an older MacBook. So why have I not used an Apple product? The quick answer is that I don't know. I think there's a bit of context to this though. When I first got involved with 16-bit computing, Apple was a bit of a joke in those days. We're talking the period of extremely expensive computers for very little power output. They were being cornered by Amiga, they were being cornered by Atari, being cornered by the growing IBM compatible range. And, you know, eventually you got to the point where Apple, pre-Jobs returned, licensed out Apple Mac designs. There was the period of the clones, the attack of the clones, if you will. And I looked at that as an Amiga user with a bit of disdain, to be honest. They clearly didn't know what they were doing with Apple. Now, obviously the whole thing with Steve Jobs and Next Computing, all that happened and integrated. The buyout led to Jobs retaking the hot seat at Apple. But even then, I wasn't particularly interested. Now, it seems, having spoken to people, that while I went down the Amiga to the PC route, a lot of people went from the Amiga to the Apple route. And I can see why. Although these days I'm a big fan of open source, the Amiga and the Mac are very similar in terms of ethos and philosophy and their focus on media development and creation. That wasn't really a strength of the PC at that time. So I can see why a lot of people went towards Apple. Looking back, I could never have afforded an Apple until probably the last 10 years or so. But I am thinking to myself, I got on the wrong train there. Why did I not move from Amiga to Apple and have a Macintosh? It's something I'm going to have to give a bit more thought to. I just don't know. It's just, you know, it's how things turn out. That's how it turned out. I went from Amiga to PC, through Windows, and nowadays to Linux. But I am really, really tempted to switch from Linux to Mac OS, having used the M3 2024 MacBook Air. Now this is just the tiny version as well. This is the 13-inch with 8GB RAM and 256GB of storage. I'm impressed with a low-end device, comparatively speaking. So how impressed would I be with a bigger MacBook? I don't know. Maybe I'll never find out. At this point in proceedings, I want to thank you for watching this video and ask you very kindly if you would subscribe to the channel and share these videos far and wide, and please comment as well. I do try to respond to commenters on my videos, and if you leave a message, I will reply to you too.